we're going to look at why is the spine and the posture system so important to your organism, health, and well-being. I call this presentation Keys for Happy and Focused Humans. And then we'll cover some basic back exercises, and if we have time, heart coherence technique. So who am I? I ask myself that question every morning. Now, let me tell you that my mother's life was saved through chiropractic. And when she was 18, she flew from Cannes to Davenport, Iowa in the 50s to study chiropractic. Can you imagine the contrast between Cannes and Davenport, Iowa? and anyway, she survived. And my elder brother and I were so inspired that we became chiropractors as well. And we went to study in Los Angeles, Whittier, California, actually. And then I worked then afterwards. I had my office for 20 years in Los Angeles. And during that time, I had several heads of studios, really important heavyweight international music agents, producers, attorneys, some actors. And the reason I'm saying that is because these people had unimaginable levels of stress. If you think you're stressed, you have no idea what else is out there. But so on extreme levels of stress for prolonged periods of time. So basically, I ended up having to figure out, how do I help these people? How do I help rebuild their health and bring them back and make them human again? No, I'm just joking. So that's when I started collecting information on what I love to do, helping to rebuild people's health. And now really a strong emphasis also on brain fitness. And being in Los Angeles, being in this huge metropolis, people from around the world would fly in to teach. So I had access to top level teaching from chiropractic, whether it's chiropractic or practical neurology, functional neurology, supplement therapies and things of that nature. Mind, body, everything. So that's how I started building the service that I provide to you guys. Okay, so the body leads the mind. This is a professor at Harvard in sociology, and she wrote this book called Presence. And anyway, so she explains that your posture affects your view of the world, your self-esteem, and how you perform on tests and job interviews. And she listed 276 studies. But what she doesn't know is the neurology behind it. So the position of your posture, the position of your spine affects not only your conscious mind, but your subconscious. So listen up. So this is unfortunately the new state of affairs for the current and older generation. People are completely hunched over, and this poses some problems. First, let me go back to some basics here. You have a brain, which is the master, and then you have the servants, which are the muscles and the organs. So the master tells the servants, the muscles and organs, what to do, except for the heart and the enteric nervous system. But anyway, so if the brain tells the muscle to move, so if you have a big muscle and the connection between the brain and the muscle is a nerve, if you cut the nerve with a big muscle, you're going to have no power in that muscle. Why? Because the nerve has been cut. So same thing for an organ. So you need that nerve supply and nerve flow to go to the muscles, to go to the organs, to go to the tissues so that they can be alive and that they can function. So to come back to the hunched over posture, the reason that when you distort your spine and have a bad posture, it's a problem because not only do you develop pains, but it compresses the heart and the lungs. And there's three things the brain wants. It wants oxygen, it wants glucose, and it wants stimulation. Glucose, by the way, it's only 2% or 5% of your body weight, but it consumes 20% of all the glucose in the blood. So this is a sugar hog. But anyway, so we need oxygen to get the brain running. So right there and then, with less oxygen, you're not as sharp. Then remember how I said the body leads the mind. This is a posture of aggression. So what are you telling your non-conscious mind? You're saying, I'm ready to fight, or I'm ready to, defend myself. And what it does is it triggers in the more primitive brain a reaction of ready to fight. And that results in a whole cascade of neurological events. Now, remember, we run on software. So I was talking about the flow, the nerve flow that animates your life, but it's also software. And so it puts your body on overdrive. So imagine driving on a freeway at 120 kilometers per hour and you're in third gear. Well, you're going to burn the engine pretty quickly. So it should come as no surprise that you then have an exhausted body and an exhausted brain if you're in this state all the time, which it's not funny, but it's common. So it should come as no surprise with the tired brain that you have less focus, the memory goes out the window, you're shutting down the frontal lobe. Can you see my cursor? Good decisions are less, decreasing creativity and decreased empathy. So these are all behavioral changes brought about by posture and a misaligned spine. So in order to be erect, you have to have a tower that keeps you upright. Otherwise, you'd be a pulpos. How do you say that? Pulpo in English again, I forget. Octopus. You'd be, anyway. So the bridge between the brain and the body is the spine. So if you distort that bridge, there's some consequences, and I've just shown you some in the previous slide. But the spine and its shape and tone and its ability to move is going to affect your subconscious, or the subconscious can also mold the shape and form of your spine. And so it's a chicken and the egg situation, but there's things you can do about it. So when you have this posture, and I see this all the time, this is extreme stress on the spinal cord, because inside that bridge, inside the bridge that links the brain to the body, is the spinal cord, which is a back brain, basically. And then off of the back brain comes off the nerves that plug into the organs and into the muscles. So you're literally pulling on the nerves, pulling on the spinal cord, and it should come as no surprise that you can be tense. But the problem with that is you have less energy and less messaging to efficiently run the body. It's like putting your finger on the hose. And so we talk about life force, you know, and when you do yoga or meditation, we're talking about literally the life force, one of the major sources of life force. Oh, do you follow me so far? Is this clear? So what is good posture? Well, this is what we're seeing a lot right now. This is like the predominant thing that we see. Less of that, less of this. This is the big issue. If you look at a plumb line, the red line here, the good posture is the plumb line goes through the middle of the ear, the middle of the shoulder, the hip, just behind the knee, and then smack in the middle of the ankle. And then when you look from the front, the eyes need to be leveled. The base of the skull needs to be leveled. Shoulders, hips, knees aligned with the hips, not caved in or caved out. And the knees over the ankles, same thing, not caved in or caved out. So when I do a presentation at a school or at a company, I have people play doctor and patient and reverse roles so that they begin to start looking and paying attention to these lines, and so that they know whether or not they need to take action. So remember, I told you the brain works and runs the body with software. And so one of the reasons one of the theories that's being postulated in modern neuroscience is that one of the reasons we have such a large brain, neocortex actually, is because we're bipedal. In other words, we have this large body walking on two small feet. And that's the theory that's going around now. That's one of the reasons why we have such a large brain today. Well, people are being sedentary and sitting in really bad posture, and we're expecting a de-evolution of the human brain, because the brain is like a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. So we haven't seen that yet, but we've seen definitely symptoms of lesser brain function. It's called digital dementia. It's not funny, but so we have parts of the brain here that control the posture. We have the brain stem that controls the reflexes that keep you in extension upright against gravity. And then we have the eyes and the balance system that tells your system where you are in space and whether you need to correct. And then we have the spinal cord that receives all the messages from the body, whether it's the movement or the sensations or a sensation of position in space. And then it bundles up that information and sends it upstairs. But if your spinal cord is yanked and the nerves are yanked, the quality of the information that you're going to send back to the brain isn't going to be as accurate or as full as it could be. And then you have the cerebellum, this little brain back here. This thing has actually more neurons than the whole big thing here. It's fascinating how we're built. Anyway, this thing is really important when it comes to learning, but posture, of course, but it comes to learning and processing emotions. Why? Because it acts as a metronome and it helps to get information coming from the body and perception of the environment into the higher centers that process the information, give meaning to this data. But what it does is, when it comes to posture, it controls muscle tone and tension and synergy. and things so that things work together properly, front, back, side to side. What I didn't tell you is that the eyes control back muscles as well and the balance in the eyes affect the muscles throughout the entire body. Why? Because we have a basic foundational program that requires us to have the eyes parallel to the horizon. So if your eyes are tilted, if your head's tilted like that, then your eyes are off balance. And so then there's going to be an adjustment throughout the entire body based on the fact the eyes aren't leveled. Could be because you have eye weakness or balance instability or poor coordination, reflexes between the eyes and the balance. So this software affects the entire posture, but it can be altered. So my job is to find out who's doing what, if they're doing their job, and how can I stimulate and help these things work. Okay, so what do I do with you guys? How do I help you? With Gentle Chiropractic. Why? Because I speak to the brain. And you don't need a hammer to speak to the brain. Why do I want to speak to the brain? Because of the circuitry I just told you about, all these sections. And I want to diagnose and figure out who's working on who's on vacation and what to stimulate or not. But I also keep in mind these maps that are in your brain and that represent the body. So there's maps for movement and there's maps for sensation like pressure, temperature, pain. So let's say you have low back pain. I look at the body globally, always. You come in with your pain and I respect that and I really want to help you get rid of your pain. But I never look at the one area that hurts you. I look at the whole thing. Why? Because that's what makes sense. Anyway, so if you have low back pain, it could be that the area representing the low back in your brain get blurred. In other words, it's not clearly defined because that area you're sitting all day and you're not moving it. So there's not a clear definition of that area. And remember, in the brain, when you don't use it, you lose it. So if an area isn't being moved, the corresponding area in the brain can shrink or functionally shrink, okay? And so what do I want to do? I want to make that map clear again so that the brain can clearly find the low back and fix it, because that's the brain's job. The brain's job is to adjust your spine, align your bones, and heal your body and make it function. So remember, this is neurocircuitry. So we're talking about software and things like that. So you don't need, for instance, my analogy is like writing an email to the brain when I work on your body. You don't need a hammer to write on the keyboard. So you don't need a lot of strength and force to get the brain's attention. On the contrary. So what do? I'll put micro movements. Let's say that I'll take the pelvis and put it in micro movement, and that'll light up the brain and get it to listen. Then I can do pressure on some tendons and ligaments, or I can use an instrument to introduce an impulse in a joint, or I can press on the joint. All this, and depending on where I do it, on which side, it's going to affect different areas of the brain. But all this is to speak to the brain and say, hey, can you start looking at the low back again and the pelvis and do your job? And it's not because the brain isn't doing its job, it's just there's disconnect, probably usually from our habits, our sedentary situation right now. So Gentle Chiropractic. So that's one way. The other thing I do is I also look at the body in terms of triangles. There's triangles all over the place, whether it's the pelvis, the legs, the arms, the cranium. And I propose corrections and alignments to align these triangles and have them stacked properly. Now you'll notice these are, well, I'm not going to get into that, but basically there's a direct link between the nervous system and the chakra system of the body. Those two are intricately connected. That's another way our organism receives energy, is through these chakras. But if the nervous system isn't happy, it alters also the shape and ability to absorb energy from the sun, the air, in order, the brain is like a big battery. And in order to recharge this battery, you need the spine to freely move and be well aligned. Because when it moves, it triggers these nerve endings called mechanoreceptors that send out these sparks that then recharge the brain. And then this brain is like a fountain with two heads, and it redistributes this energy to animate the organs, to animate the muscles. Now, one of the things I do is sometimes I touch you guys, and then I'll back off for a few seconds or a minute, or even 2 minutes. That's because I'm giving space, so to speak, for the brain to process the stimulation I just sent. In other words, to receive the message, interpret it, and do something about it. Okay, so that's why I'm not touching all the time.
Yeah, no, it is very different to normal chiropractic, right? So
yeah, I also do traditional adjustments, but sparingly, very sparingly.
But like the spine, if it's a bit distorted, it manages to, like, if you're a certain age, it's like, you know, that's it. You can no longer rectify it, or no?
Yes. Well, it depends if you have degeneration. So if you have worn out disc, worn out bones, and spurs all over the place, and then it makes it more difficult. But I have had patients with severe scoliosis and large, long rods surgically placed into their spine, and I've been able to make them straighter and change their posture in a significant way. And so I don't place any limits to what the body can do, but if you don't have massive degeneration and spurring and fusion, then the brain, all these pieces are mobile, and the brain controls the muscle change. So yes, lots can be changed. Now, if you have a deformity, if you're born in a deformed way, or if you have a severe scoliosis, we can improve on it, but to a degree. But if it's a mild scoliosis, we can definitely get you to a point of a good, healthy posture. That doesn't mean we're going to straighten the spine completely, but that's almost not necessarily relevant. What we want is the spine to move freely and be as aligned as it can be, and being able to stimulate the brain, recharge the brain in energy, and keep you and affect your subconscious in a constructive way. So when it comes to exercises, when the biggest bang for your buck are power poses. In other words, these are poses that change your posture, open up your chest, bring in the oxygen, put you in extension, and open to receive. Open. So what I'm going to have you do right now is I'm going to have you raise your arms. Go ahead. Slightly bring your chest out and bring your chin up and just stay like that for the next 20 seconds while I speak. So people who are born blind will assume that position if they win something. So this is a spontaneous position of elation, of victory, of feeling empowered. And sure enough, it changes your mood and it changes your state when you assume it. You can relax if you want. All right. Spinal health extension exercise. Since people are caved in all the time, so they're slouching, they have postural decline, we want the reverse. We want to bring people an extension. So one exercise is the Superwoman or Superman extension exercise where you lie face down and you bring your arms and your legs up and your head up. Now, some kids are so weak from sitting and not playing outside, they can't even lift up their legs or their trunk. They have to do one at a time. That's how sedentary some portions of population have become. As for this exercise, the idea is to roll every single bone in your spine in extension and then in flexion. So you'll never see a dog or a cat get up in the morning without stretching. And we should do the same. And the reason being is we want to stretch the ligaments and get them and the tendons and get them nice and ready for the day, and start right there and then activating your brain so you can function. So if you do that, you should be sharper sooner in the day, even without your coffee. This is a great transition stretch from work, for instance, if you come home from work or from school. So you can lie on your back, again, stretch against gravity, the spine and the ligaments, open up the chest, oxygenate, bring these pecs, stretch the pecs, and be more ready for a open and erect, empowered posture. So this particular stretch also you can do during the day. I mean, there's no particular time set. But as I say, if kids come home from school before they do homework or they play, this is a good stretch for them to do, or adults. And then everybody will be calmer and happier. So those are some really, really basic exercises and stretches to do. Obviously, when I provide you with exercise, I don't know, Hayden, if you've been doing your exercises, if you've had time, but if you have any questions, do ask me. But then based on the weaknesses in their posture control system, I'm going to give you personalized exercise to stimulate whatever circuitry is weaker. So that you can we can remedy that, and you can have spontaneously good posture and a happy spine. So right now, I'm not going to get into the physiology of the heart, but basically the heart and the brain, they work together. And Einstein said that the quote isn't coming to me, but basically that the heart is the master and that the brain is a servant. And that society we live in a culture that honors the servant and the heart is a gift, and has forgotten the master and the gift, basically. So what does that mean in real concrete terms? That means that the heart is going to influence brain waves in the brain. In other words, the heart is a pace setter that sets the pace for the brain waves. So there's different brain waves. So when you're sleeping, you have a certain brain wave. When you're super excited, you have a certain brain wave. When you're chill, you have another brain wave. So if you're in a high beta brainwave all the time, you're not going to be able to learn. You're not going to be able to process emotions. You're not going to be able to process things around you. You're just going to be mind chatter. So connecting with the heart is going to be a strategy to calm the brain waves down, make the brain happier, and make you a lot more efficient. Also, you need to know that if you have poor posture, not only are you compressing the heart and making it harder for it to work, but you're also pulling on the nerves that go to the heart and activate it also. The heart is amazing. It has 40,000 neurons, all capable of learning, remembering, and making decisions. So people theorize that from the Heart Math Institute that this is a key organ to connect with the divine, to connect with intuitions in its different forms, and to know as opposed to figure out things. In other words, you know you have to buy this apartment as opposed to doing all the relying only on analysis. So it makes life a lot easier, and it's actually following your heart becomes the smart thing to do. So let's do the exercise and then we'll finish. I'm going to have you put your left hand over the left side of your sternum, your breastplate, and put the right hand on top, and then close your eyes. And I'll have you breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. And I'm going to have you imagine that you're seeing your heart. And so just look at that heart. And now imagine that this heart is changing into like a lung, so that when you breathe in, the heart expands, and when you breathe out, it contracts. So you breathe in, fully expand the heart, and when you breathe out, the heart contracts. And just doing this 5 minutes a day can change a person from a state of anxiety or depression or feel better about themselves. And that's been proven by research. And so when you do this, you can also add another layer, which is to remember a time when you received a gift. Could be love, could be a gift of somebody appreciating you or thanking you or telling you how wonderful you are, or a hug. So pick a gift and imagine that when you breathe in, your heart is expanding and you're receiving the gift. And when you breathe out, you send that gift to all the cells of your body. So you breathe in the hug or the love and breathe it out to all the cells of your body. And so now I'm going to have you gently bring your hands down and you can open your eyes. If you do this enough, you're anchoring this area as an area of heightened level of peace and comfort. So if, let's say, you're nervous, or somebody cut you off in traffic, or you had a difficult conversation, you can immediately connect, put your hand over that area, and immediately it's going to tell the rest of your body and your physiology that things are okay and that that put you in that good state. Also, if you don't feel like spreading the love to the rest of your cells, you can just breathe from the heart, like I said, imagining that it opens up and then contracts, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And just do that simply, just that alone, even for 5 minutes, it's going to do wonders in terms of calming your brain waves, but also heightening your intuition and making it easier to connect with the divine also. Like if you're like speaking to God and you feel stuck, this is something I do use myself to like get out of my head and get the mind chatter to stop. So this is the end of the presentation. Again, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them for now. If you don't, you don't.
I've been.
Oh, sorry.
Go
Go
ahead.
first.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say I don't have any questions because I've been studying this for the past 2 weeks, pretty intricately. So, I'm always excited to learn more about this because it was so interesting being in Barcelona. I've done tons of types of different chiropractic care from being a goalkeeper, and this helped more dramatically more than anything else I've done when they crack me in half or whatever.
Thank you, Hayden. Thank you.
Of course.
I have a question for children. When
Yeah.
is a good age for that? Because I see my child, they don't have, I mean, my daughter has also a bit like me, this posture, I think, where she's a bit hunched over and.
So chiropractors treat children from the moment they're born, okay?
Okay.
So if you have a spine, you're a candidate.
Okay. And my son has his feet that go in a lot. Is
Right.
that something also that
Usually that's associated with excessive tension in the spinal cord.
okay.
And so the body's doing what it can to remove tension off of the area. So he definitely needs to have some help.
Okay.
And we can provide that.
Well, I know where your office is now. Okay.
Well, at least now you know, based on what Hayden said, that there's hope for you, and there's something to look forward to. So
Great. Well, hey, it helped you a lot, right?
Yeah, for sure, definitely, and my family a ton.
Okay.
Like I'm going back to Barcelona because I live in LA. I'm going back to Barcelona for a week. That's one of the reasons I'm going is so I can see Muriel every day.
Ah, amazing.
Yeah.
Great. Wow. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Muriel.
you're welcome.
Maria.
My pleasure.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.